Disclaimer: this story explores mature emotional themes such as strained family relationships and blurred boundaries. It does not contain explicit material, but viewer discretion is advised. All characters are adults. I was only trying to find some peace. After a brutal divorce and the slow-motion chaos of starting over in someone else's house, peace felt like a fantasy. But there he was, kind, calm, and always just around when I needed to exhale. My husband's adult son. Let me explain. I married Greg when I was 38. He was older, 53, and had been widowed for a few years. We met at a real estate seminar of all places. He was smart, stable, and emotionally available in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. We clicked fast. I didn't ask too many questions about his past, just the essentials. He had one son from his first marriage, Ethan, who was 24 and lived on his own. I didn't meet Ethan until after Greg and I were married. Greg said he wanted to ease him into things. In hindsight, that should have been my first red flag. The first time Ethan came over, it was like someone dropped a live wire into the house. He was polite, even friendly, but there was something about the way he looked at me. Not disrespectful, just sharp, like he was seeing something I didn't even see in myself. Greg didn't notice. He was always either working, golfing, or glued to his phone. I tried to bond with Ethan, awkward as it was. He'd come by to help with the lawn or fix a cabinet door, always brushing off my thanks with a no problem, just glad to help. He was quick with a joke, quick with his hands, and even quicker to read a room. Over the months, we fell into a rhythm, me and Ethan, not Greg. I'd find myself staying in the kitchen longer if I knew Ethan was dropping by. He'd ask how I was really doing, not in that passive, "how are you?" kind of way, but with a stare that made me feel seen. Then one afternoon, after a particularly stressful week with Greg barely acknowledging my existence, Ethan stopped by unannounced. Said he'd noticed the tension. "You look like you're about to break," he said. I half laughed, half broke right there. I told him I was just trying to stay calm, trying to keep the peace, for Greg, for the house, for myself. "You need to relax," Ethan said. "Seriously, you're wound up tight." He offered to help. Just help. Nothing weird. He made tea, turned on some low music, even brought a little neck massager from his car. I laughed when he pulled it out. "You came prepared," I joked. "Always am," he replied. It felt harmless, intimate, but not inappropriate. Like someone was finally taking care of me, even for a moment. I didn't feel guilty. I felt human again. Until his voice changed. We were in the living room. Me on the couch. Ethan sitting on the floor in front of me, leaning back slightly, letting me vent while he occasionally reached back to adjust the massager behind my shoulders. Then he said it. The sentence that turned the entire room upside down. That made my stomach flip and my heart freeze in place. And that's when my stepson said I froze. The words hung in the air like smoke, visible, dangerous, impossible to ignore. "You don't even realize how he's breaking you." Ethan's voice was low, steady, but there was heat behind it. I didn't know what to say. Was it a warning? A confession? An accusation? All I knew was that the calm I'd felt seconds before had vanished. My stomach churned, and I felt every nerve wake up at once. I turned slowly to face him. "What did you just say?" He didn't blink. "Greg. He treats you like your furniture. I see it every time I come here. And you've started to believe that's all you're worth." I swallowed hard. It was too close to the truth. That was the worst part. Not that Ethan said it, but that he wasn't wrong. I had started to shrink. In the beginning, Greg was warm, thoughtful, the kind of man who noticed the small things: coffee orders, cold feet in bed, how I liked the windows open at night. But somewhere between month 6 and month 18, that version of him vanished. He became distracted, emotionally absent. He never yelled, never hit. He just stopped seeing me. "I didn't ask for your opinion," I said, trying to sound firm. "It came out shaky." "You didn't have to," Ethan replied. You don't talk about it, but I see it. The silence. The way you wait for him to remember you're in the room. He got up off the floor, now standing above me. Not in a threatening way. He just looked serious, older than 24 in that moment. Why are you really here? I asked. To help, he said. You don't have to live like this. I'm not. I stopped. What was I going to say? I'm not unhappy? That would have been a lie, and we both knew it. The silence stretched. I'm not trying to mess with your head, he added. I'm just tired of watching you pretend this is normal. The intensity of his gaze made my pulse race. Not because I felt attraction, but because someone was finally paying attention. And that attention was unsettling. We were playing with fire. Neither of us had crossed a line, but we were towing it. Do you talk to your dad like this? I asked, needing to break the moment. Ethan laughed under his breath, bitter. My dad doesn't talk to anyone unless there's a reason. He's not the guy you married. He's the guy who plays the part just long enough to make you think you're lucky. That hit harder than I expected. Maybe because I knew it was true. He told me once, Ethan continued, that people fall in love with what they think someone is, not who they really are. That's a hell of a thing to tell your son, I muttered. Yeah, he nodded. It is. I stood up. We were too close. I needed space to think, to breathe, to remember who I was before I became this hollow version of myself. I need to clear my head, I said, brushing past him. Okay, he said, stepping back. But don't lie to yourself. You don't owe my dad loyalty if it's costing you. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I walked upstairs, the sound of my footsteps loud in the silence. I didn't know if I was angry, ashamed, or afraid, but I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The air in the house changed after that night. I don't know if Ethan felt it too, but I became hyper-aware of everything, my words, my movements, how long I looked at him, how often he came around. Nothing technically happened, but something definitely shifted. Greg didn't notice. That part never changed. He was still deep in his own world, conference calls, golf outings, disappearing for entire weekends to get space. It had always annoyed me. Now it felt like a freefall with no one catching me but the last person who should. But Ethan didn't come by for 2 full weeks after that conversation. No calls. No texts. Nothing. And as much as I told myself it was for the best, part of me hated how empty the house felt without him. That scared me more than anything. Then Greg brought up something out of nowhere over dinner. I've been thinking we should sell the house, he said, casually spearing a piece of steak with his fork. What? I almost dropped my glass. I want to downsize. This place feels too big, and frankly, too expensive. You don't use half the rooms anyway. You. Not we. It wasn't the suggestion itself. It was the way he said it, like he was making a business decision, not talking to his wife. I sat there, trying to keep my face neutral. I thought we agreed we'd stay put for a while, I said. Greg shrugged. Things change. Market's hot right now. It's a smart move. I wanted to ask whose idea this really was, because something about the timing felt strategic. And then it hit me he knew something. Or thought he did. Later that night, I found Ethan's name in Greg's text history. The messages weren't long, but they were enough. Greg, I think she's confused about where she stands. Ethan, she's not the problem. Greg, don't get involved. You always think you know better. Ethan, maybe I do. It took me a few reads to fully register what I was looking at. They had talked about me. And it wasn't recent. It had been going on for months. Buried beneath my shock was a question I didn't want to ask. Had Ethan always been watching me for Greg? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, he said quietly. No small talk. I saw the texts. Silence. You've been talking to him about me this whole time? No. Not like that, he said. It started with him venting. Then I started pushing back. He didn't like it. You made me feel like I could trust you. You can, he insisted. But yeah, I should have told you. I screwed up. You think? I said, heart racing. He sighed. I never meant to spy. I was trying to protect you. You sound like him right now. That stung. I could hear it in the pause. I'm coming over, he said. No. Don't. I'm not letting you go through this alone. I was alone before you showed up, I snapped. Maybe I was better off that way. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, numb. That's when I heard the front door unlock. Greg was home early, and something about the sound of his footsteps made my skin prickle. The sound of Greg's footsteps was heavier than usual. Slower. Intentional. I stayed frozen on the edge of the bed, phone still in my hand, heartbeat like a hammer inside my chest. Then his voice, "We need to talk." He was already standing in the doorway before I could answer. His face was unreadable, calm, but not relaxed, like someone running calculations behind their eyes. About what? I asked, keeping my voice level. Greg walked in and sat down on the opposite end of the bed. Not next to me. Just enough distance to make it feel strategic. You and Ethan. He said it like a statement, not a question. I didn't flinch. What about us? He gave a thin smile. You've been leaning on him a lot lately. More than usual. Thought maybe I should check in before this house starts feeling like a courtroom. I scoffed. Funny. You haven't checked in for weeks. That's not fair, he said, tone sharpening. You know how busy I've been. And you know how absent you've been, I snapped back. A beat of silence. Then Greg leaned forward, elbows on knees, like a therapist trying to play calm. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm saying something's off. And I don't like being kept in the dark. I stared at him. Are you talking about your marriage or your property? Greg's eyes narrowed. Don't do that. Do what? I said, standing. Call out the fact that this isn't about love or partnership or anything close. You talk about this house more than you talk about me. He stood, too. I've given you everything. Stability. Comfort. This life. And now you're whispering in corners with my son like I'm the villain. You are the villain when you make me feel like a ghost in my own home, I said, my voice cracking. Greg stepped closer. Not aggressively, but close enough to make it clear who had the upper hand in his mind. I've seen women like you, he said, voice low. Always needing attention. Always playing victim. You think Ethan sees you? He's just playing out his own rebellion. This has nothing to do with you. My blood ran cold. You don't know him, I said. And you don't know yourself, he replied. Just then, the front door slammed downstairs. Both our heads turned. Ethan? I called out, already moving toward the hall. Yeah, came his voice. Steady. Too steady. He was climbing the stairs fast. He must have driven straight over after our call. Greg stepped into the hallway just as Ethan reached the landing. The two men locked eyes. There was a charge between them like something unsaid had been festering far too long. Ethan broke it first. She doesn't need you to speak for her. She needs you to actually see her. Greg's laugh was sharp, bitter. This isn't your place, son. Ethan took a step closer. Maybe it's not. But someone had to show up. Greg turned to me. Is this what you want now? Him. I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't have feelings, but because none of this was really about love anymore. It was about power. Control. I looked between them, Greg, trying to maintain dominance, Ethan, standing tall but clearly holding back something heavier. I don't want either of you fighting over me like I'm property, I said. Then Ethan said something I didn't expect. She's not choosing between us. She's choosing herself. And for the first time, I saw Greg's expression crack. For a moment, everything just stopped. Greg didn't respond. He just stared at Ethan like he was looking at someone he didn't recognize. She's not choosing between us. She's choosing herself. Those words didn't just land, they detonated. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Greg turned away and walked back into the bedroom. No shouting. No slamming. Just silence that somehow felt louder than any fight. Ethan looked at me. Are you okay? I nodded. I wasn't sure if I was lying or not. We moved to the living room, the three of us splitting apart like oil and water. Greg didn't follow. He stayed upstairs. Maybe that was his retreat. Or maybe he was planning something. I couldn't tell anymore. Ethan sat across from me. There was something different in his expression now, less fire, more weight. I didn't come just to fight him, he said quietly. I came because I found something. I blinked. What do you mean? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I went to Dad's office this morning. He wasn't supposed to be there, but I caught something on his desk. Thought it was a contract or something at first. He handed it to me. It wasn't a contract. It was a draft agreement for something called a marital reassignment trust. Legal sounding, cold, but the words were brutal once you read between the lines. If Greg filed it, I'd be left with nothing. No house. No financial cushion. No claim to anything we'd built together. He's been planning this, Ethan said. Prepping it for weeks. I scanned the document. Dates. Terms. Clauses designed to make sure if I left or got pushed out, I wouldn't take a cent with me. This is why he wanted to sell the house, I whispered. He's clearing the board. Ethan nodded. You were never supposed to see this. My stomach turned. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of how calculated it was. Greg wasn't emotional. He wasn't careless. He was precise. Strategic. Which meant this didn't come from anger or even heartbreak. It came from control. I felt suddenly dizzy. All that time I thought he just didn't care. But this is worse. It's not about you, Ethan said. It's about him needing to win. Needing to remind you who holds the cards. The paper shook slightly in my hands. I looked at Ethan. Why are you showing me this now? His answer was a long pause. Because I thought maybe you were strong enough to leave, but I realized you were waiting for proof. I couldn't speak. My thoughts were racing, colliding, unraveling. Then a voice from behind us made everything worse. You had no right to go through my things. Greg was standing at the base of the stairs, holding another paper, this one thicker, stamped, official. I've already filed it, he said flatly. He looked at me, not with rage, but with chilling finality. You're not entitled to what you didn't earn. My heart pounded. I gave up everything for this life. You made a choice, he said. Now I'm making mine. Ethan moved a step in front of me, but Greg raised his hand. Don't, he said. This doesn't concern you anymore. But it did. And the war had just gone public. Greg's words hit like a brick. You're not entitled to what you didn't earn. I didn't even realize I was standing until Ethan stepped between us. His hands were clenched. His voice was steady. You're not doing this, he said to Greg. You don't get to destroy her just because you lost control. Greg didn't flinch. You don't know what you're talking about. You're still a kid playing house in someone else's mess. No, I cut in, stepping past Ethan. He's the only one in this house telling the truth. Greg stared at me, jaw tight, nostrils flaring. I'd never seen him lose his cool. Not fully, but now the cracks were visible. This wasn't a calculated move anymore. This was retaliation. You really think he cares about you? Greg asked, pointing at Ethan. He's obsessed with saving people. You're just the latest project. I felt the hit, but I didn't back down. I don't need saving, I said. But I'm done being silent. I gave you my loyalty, my time, my trust, and you planned behind my back to wipe me off the map. You would have done the same, Greg said coldly. If you were smart. That was it. That sentence broke something. I looked at Ethan, who was still holding the document he brought. Then at Greg, who thought this paper in his hand meant the end of me. I took a deep breath. I already contacted a lawyer, I lied. Last week. I knew something was coming. You made it obvious. Greg raised an eyebrow. You're bluffing. Try me, I said. And that's when the real shift happened. His expression changed, not to fear, but uncertainty. He wasn't expecting resistance. Not from me. For so long, he treated my silence like consent, my patience like weakness. But now the room was balanced. Greg lowered the paper slowly. You've changed. No, I said. I'm just finally done pretending. He didn't say another word. He turned, walked upstairs, and closed the door behind him. Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding. Did you really call a lawyer? He asked quietly. No, I admitted. But I will. We stood in the center of the living room, both of us trying to figure out what this new chapter was going to look like. Then Ethan said, he's going to fight dirty. You know that, right? I do, I said. But at least now I know who I'm actually fighting. He nodded. Then, hesitantly, I meant what I said. You don't have to go through this alone. I smiled, a tired, real smile. I know. But I think I finally remember how to stand on my own. Ethan didn't push. He just stayed. Quietly. Later that night, I started packing a bag. Not everything, just the essentials. Enough to leave without warning. I didn't know where I'd go yet. But I knew staying wasn't an option anymore. As I zipped up the last pocket, a small envelope fell out from one of the drawers. My name was written on the front in Greg's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a note, short, direct. You weren't supposed to find out this way. But maybe this is better. Now you'll finally leave like I wanted you to. Even his final words weren't an apology. Just control in disguise. But it didn't matter. I folded the note, slid it back inside, and walked out. No tears. No last look. I was finally choosing myself. I didn't look back. Not once. Ethan offered to drive me somewhere, anywhere, but I told him I needed to do this part alone. I needed to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I wasn't trapped anymore. That I could leave on my own terms. I checked into a small hotel just outside the city. Quiet, clean, and anonymous. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. The next morning, I made good on my promise. I called a lawyer. Explained everything. The trust Greg had filed. The way he blindsided me. The emotional manipulation. I expected hesitation or legalese. Instead, the woman on the line simply said, "You've got a case." By the end of the week, I had protection in place. No house sale. No underhanded financial games. I wasn't going to be erased. Not this time. Ethan kept checking in, but from a distance. He never pushed, never showed up uninvited. He gave me what I needed most, space. Funny how someone can show you more care by stepping back than others ever did by staying close. A few weeks later, Greg sent a message through his lawyer. Cold. Transactional. He agreed to a settlement, one that was fair, mostly because he didn't want me digging deeper. That was fine with me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. As for Ethan, we met up for coffee, once the dust had settled. No drama. Just two people on the other side of a storm. I don't regret anything, he said. Neither do I replied. He smiled, but it wasn't loaded. It wasn't romantic or messy. It was simple. Honest. I just wanted you to be okay, he added. I nodded. I think I finally am. That was the last time we saw each other for a while. Not because of awkwardness, but because our connection served its purpose. He was the mirror I needed, the reminder that I was still in there somewhere. And once I saw myself again, I didn't need saving. I needed movement. I moved into a small apartment near a local art center. Started teaching part-time workshops. Met new people. Laughed again. Slept through the night. The kind of peace that doesn't feel like a pause, but a new beginning. Looking back, here's what I learned. Sometimes the people who promise you security are the same ones who make you feel the most unsafe. And sometimes, the ones who challenge your comfort are the ones who set you free. You can rebuild from nothing. But only if you let go of the version of yourself that settled for crumbs. And above all, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Did you enjoy this story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Comment below, I read everything. If you liked this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more real-life dramas, twists, and emotional journeys.